I have been meaning to make a video like this for a long time. There are a lot of steps that a tank player can make to improve the success rate of his or her run, and cooldown tracking arguably is one of the first steps into making a great tank. Making use of offensive CDs like Xuen, Combustion, or Wild Spirits are not only going to make your DPS horny to play with you more, but will also help you get the kill done faster. While this can be tied to routing, knowing what CDs cause big damage will help you. So today in this video, we're going to highlight some of my favorite add-ons, which is OmniCD. This add-on is super lightweight, highly customizable, and this is starting to sound like an advertisement. So anyways, I want to walk you through my thought process in setting up an add-on like this, and give some suggestions on how to not overload you with information. There is a lot you can track from this add-on, including offensives to defensives to personal DRs to trinkets, racials, and so on and so on. Unless you are leading a group and shot calling, there is no need to track everything. So, we are going to stick to the bare minimum. Before I get started, just a quick announcement. I have finally been able to set up my new Discord server with some help from my mods. If you're interested in joining me there, you will not only be able to download my profile for OmniCD, but also connect with me and the community for people who like my Who's writing this? So a Discord server is something that I've been meaning to do for a while now, and I'm pretty new to it, but hopefully with your guys' help, I can turn it into just a complete banger. The link to join is in the description below, but with that out of the way, let's dive into this video. I'm not gonna lie, the bare pun, or bare minimum, made me sad. So we're gonna actually do this on my Paladin. So, once you are in game, what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to pull up the add-on. Now, if you are looking for the profiles for both the one that I'm going to make in this video as well as my own profile that I use, it's going to be in the Discord link below. Feel free to join, kind of go through the verification steps, and you'll be able to access these and access the import strings. So if you're interested in skipping those steps, feel free to join there. But to open up the add-on, we're going to do /OC. You can also type out /OmniCD if you want to feel like a linguistic major, if you really want to type it out, but /OC works. And this is going to pull up the add-on interface. So it does look a little bit overwhelming at start. They mainly just, the author kind of tells you about bug fixes that they've fixed recently. When you update this, you can also send in feedback, but this is something that you don't really need to care about. The biggest thing is if you collapse the friendly category, you're gonna see 5. You're gonna see general, friendly, spell editor, and then the profiles. Profiles you don't really have to worry about, but if you do decide to take my profiles, I'm gonna have 2 of them. Which I'll mention again at the end. You just have to hit import, and then you copy and paste the import string here, and then you do decode, and that should import the profile, and then you can kind of, put it onto whichever character you want. But for this video, we're simply going to just worry about this friendly tab, and you're going to want to make sure that it's going to be visible in dungeons. You can also make this visible in other zones like arena, obviously outdoor zones, battlegrounds, raids, and scenarios. I don't recommend using it here unless you really like the add-on. There's better add-ons for like raids and arena that you can get, like things like, Gladius, and for raids like Exorcist raid tools I find to be a little bit better for raids. So we're going to strictly stick to dungeons. And then based on which boxes that you check, you can go to the appropriate tab and edit the spells as you wish. So we're going to start in the dungeon / we're only really going to work at a dungeon. And the main thing we're going to focus on is going to be the spells that people are going to use. So the profile that I have already created for you guys, this is going to be like my introduction profile to just offensive CDs for tanks to use. So what I'm including here is offensive cooldowns, mainly kicks, and then some raid group utility. So things like Rallying Cry, Anti-Magic Zone, Darkness, Disc Barrier, along with like Aura Mastery. So those are also going to be available, and you're going to be able to see those. Though, if you do want to track more, feel free to go in and select which abilities you'd like to track. And then I'm gonna have 2 profiles. I'm gonna have like my basic one, which is just gonna be it's gonna be focused on offensive CDs. And then we're also going to have the profile that I actually use in live that you see me use, which also tracks different types of utility in a toolkit, whether it's like Explosive Shot, Frost Nova, Earthbind Totem, like things like that, as well as some racials, some trinkets that I find important if players are running it, as well as crowd control effects. So I track all of these different things mainly for the reason that I'm kind of the group leader in most of my keys. I make calls on certain prideful packs, what cooldowns to use. So when you're in that type of position, you need a lot more information displayed to you. So both of those profiles will be available, but for this one, we're just going to focus on kind of the lighter weight version. So what I'm going to do in this video is go through all of the classes and mainly talk about DPS / healer specs, and talk about, as a tank player's perspective, what cooldowns are important to pull around, or to realize like, hey, they're up, it's going to do this thing for me. If I pull big here, you know, Combustion's going to delete this pack. You know, the Ellie Shaman has his Storm Elemental available. What is that going to mean for me? So we're going to go through all these. And then if you guys do have any questions, if you're in the Discord, feel free to shoot me up there. Or you can obviously comment down below and just let me know if you have any questions or if I need to explain anything further. But again, we're going to strictly stick to dungeon DPS / healers and talk about that. So, all right, stop. Hold on. This is future Shaw from like an hour in the future, where he starts editing the video and forgets the crucial part about actually showing you guys this is how it looks. So you're going to see here, I actually activated test, something I forgot to do when I was recording, and it's going to show you a few different things here. These are able to be moved around, so you can have raid CDs moved around, you can have interrupts moved around. Oops, that's the entire screen. Interrupts can be dragged around if you need them to be closer to your frames or closer to your character model. You can do that. But essentially, as you add abilities, they're going to show up next to the raid frames. This is how I currently have it set up. If you're looking to change these positions, you can go into the position tab in the dungeon tab, and you can, you know, have an X offset, you can have your Y offset, you can have the layout to be horizontal, double row columns. Like, you can play with this yourself. It totally depends on how your UI is set up. So I'm not really going to spend too much time trying to get it into a position that's very, very like baseline or like usable across every account. You can also then have these different frames here be displayed as a cooldown next to the character, or in an interrupt and raid cooldown category, just by editing these settings. So quickly, I already talked about all this, or, you know, you'll see it, or I guess I'm about to talk about all of it. As you add more abilities, they're going to slowly start to show back up. So like, for example, when I do Blessing of Sacrifice, there it's going to be. Guardian of Ancient Kings. Guardian of Ancient Kings is going to be here as well, now added. Lay on Hands, Divine Protection won't pop up. Ardent Defender. So as you add more, they're going to shift around. And then what you can do is, like, in your column limit, you can set your columns to, you know, 6. I have currently set, but let's just say we have some of these enabled, like Cleanse Toxins, Avenger's Shield, and we won't do that. Let's just do these defensives, right? So right now I currently have 7 abilities being shown. What you can do is you can go in, you can make the columns a lot longer, or you can make them a lot shorter. So this is a way to adjust it how you would. Anyways, I'll let Shaw continue the video. It's been good getting to know you guys. Take care. Let's start it off with Death Knight. Just a quick word of caution, and not word of caution, but just like a heads up. I do track almost every single Covenant ability, just because, one, it gives me an idea of what Covenants people are playing with in the key as soon as I enter, and this information is displayed. If you do track all of these, and you know the DK has Abomination Limb because he's Necrolord, it shouldn't show these. The Swarming Mist, Destitute, and Shackle the Unworthy. It shouldn't overload. There was a bug in the past where I had to like go in and manually go into the spell editor to activate and deactivate these, but shouldn't be an issue now. I think they fixed all that. There are a few exceptions to this though, and I'll get to them later, but like Warrior is a good example. Like Condemn is not something you need to track because it only affects their Execute, which is just like in the rotation. So you're going to see this pretty much checked off for everything, but I'm going to mainly talk about what cooldowns as well. So for a DK, big cooldowns to track are going to be things like Apocalypse, Army of the Dead, Breath of Cindergrosa, Empowered Rune Weapon, Pillar of Frost, and Frostworm's Fury. These are going to be dependent on if you're playing with a Frost or an Holy DK. Both are, you know, popular specs to play. Frost is on the rise a little bit, but these are a few of the abilities that you'll see. So Breath is, I think Breath, there is a build for Breath, but I'm not sure if it's always ran. I don't run with a Frost DK normally. Oh, and then Unholy Assault down here, just in case. So these talent options will only pop up if that player is talented into that option. But for the most part, like, these should pop up and are fairly short cooldown. So going into Demon Hunter, the big thing you need to track is just Metamorphosis. There's nothing really else. A lot of their damage actually comes from their Elysian Decree and their other Covenant abilities. So Demon Hunter is really, really easy. It's also, they do have a raid defensive for Darkness. This is really good on Prideful. If you drop this at like 15 stacks, you're going to get a lot of like valuable healing from this, and it lasts for 8 seconds. So it's pretty good. It's not consistent. It's not going to like, it's not guaranteed to reduce damage. And it's also the value of how many times it might miss a player. Like a player might miss like 5 ticks in a row and then it's insane healing, or they might get hit regardless. But raid defensives are really good, and I'm tracking them in this package because for Prideful, they're good to know if you have active. Like, is your Paladin using War Mastery? Is your Demon Hunter using Darkness? So things like that. Moving on to Druid. Again, tracking all the Covenant abilities. But when it comes to cooldowns, the big things here are going to be your Berserks from your... one is for Guardian, then one is for Feral. So I just have them both tracked here. Celestial Alignment is the big one for Balanced Druid. And then I have the different incarnations just in case players run that. But almost everything else here isn't really needed to be tracked. Some people like to track Heart of the Wild. Heart of the Wild, though, is more going to be of a utility aspect, because Heart of the Wild for DPS aren't going to amplify their DPS. It's going to amplify their ability to tank mobs, or amplify their ability in their affinity of whichever affinity that they chose. So if this is Resto affinity, they're going to have like amplified off healing for 45 seconds. So this is good on prideful mobs. Like Heart of the Wild into a Wild Growth is really, really effective, you know, applying rejuves to everyone. But the caveat of that is, you know, they're going to lose a little bit of damage while, you know, weaving into a different affinity. So I don't have this tracked, but feel free to go in if that's something that you'd like to track. Just notice that I also didn't track Trank. Trank is, I think, we're tracking there. So Hunter, Wild Spirits is going to be the main one that you're going to see. This is a 2-minute cooldown. What's nice about Hunter is that Wild Spirits is going to line up with like their Bestial Wrath and their True Shadow Aura, which are two things that you're going to see down here being tracked, as well as Aspect of the Wild. I also track Stampede just in case someone decides to run it. I don't think this is the play, but I have it in here just in case, because it's a 2-minute CD that will line up with your Wild Spirits. But most hunters are going to pretty much double up, so they're going to like double up / double down, however you want to say. They're gonna Wild Spirits and then use either True Shadow Aura or Bestial Wrath or whatever that may be. So there's a lot of damage that's going to be front loaded with hunters, because they're basically using all of their cooldowns at the same time. Moving on to Mage. Mage is obviously really well known. Shifting Power is typically the play, but again, you might see Mirrors of Torment from Frost Mages. But if they run Mirrors, it's because they're like a Frost Mage only. Don't expect them to go Fire. Some of their bigger cooldowns, just in case you only play with Fire Mages and you happen to see a Frost Mage, Frozen Orb and Icy Veins, pretty big CDs for them. Actually, Frozen Orb is a bigger CD than Icy Veins. I've noticed is that Icy Veins doesn't really help them as much, but Frozen Orb allows them to get really good priority damage and really good burst damage. And then Arcane Power for those Arcane Mages out there. Pretty solid cooldown. Some people would argue like Arcane Orb and stuff, but honestly, the big thing you will see me not track is like Rune of Power, because the cooldown is less than a minute. If the cooldown is not less than a minute, I don't consider it a cooldown. Not that it's not a cooldown, but it's like it's almost like the core part of their rotation. Like it's not a big thing that's going to amplify their damage in a significant way. It's going to be a smaller thing they're probably going to be using on CD every 30 seconds, every 45 seconds to get a little bit more damage out. So that's why you might not see me track things like Arcane Orb or Rune of Power, or like some of the other abilities. Like I've had hunters say, hey, you should track my double tap, and I'm like, you're going to use that like every minute on cooldown with True Shadow Aura, so I'm not going to. So if you feel like you need to, feel free to go in, but again, the idea is not to overload information and focus on like the core part of the DPS that you're running with. Anyways, moving on to Monk. Monk, you're mainly going to see most players run Weapons of Order, though I've seen a few run Phalanx Stomp, and I've seen one run Fallen Order, but it's kind of a meme. But for them, the biggest thing that you want to track is Xuen. For healers, I'm also tracking their other Invoke the Spirits, and then also Storm Earth Fire / Serenity. These are two things to track. I have Touch of Death on here. I sometimes track it, I sometimes don't. I think that a good monk will know when they should be using Touch and when they shouldn't be. So getting down priority mobs that are really dangerous, good idea to use Touch. So things like Prideful, things like big elite mobs, for example, like Theater of Pain, the Chamber of Conquest, or Halls of Conquest, or whatever it's called, the one where you're doing a lot of different duels, and then Zab the Unfallen is in that wing. Touch of Death, those mobs are pretty good if your group's kind of struggling and getting really low. Paladins, very straightforward. You're typically going to see a Divine Toll or Ashen Hollow. If you're playing with Rat Paladins, Divine Toll definitely should be the play. These other two are kind of undertuned right now, but I don't want to get into that. That's a whole different debate. And then really, Final Reckoning is typically the talent choice that they're going to take in their last row. It's a 1-minute burst, and they're going to have the 2-minute burst with Avenging Wrath. Though I am tracking Crusade just in case Rat Paladin, and I think Holy can get this as well, want to run it. No, I think it's... No, it should just be Rat. Never mind. I'm an idiot. And then, like, this is another cooldown. Like, people say, oh, you might want to track Wake, but Wake is part of their core rotation during their burst windows, and it's going to just generate them 3 holy power. Like, Wake of Ashes isn't, like, it's good damage. It's really good burst damage, but, like, at the end of the key, it's so minimal. The big thing for it is just generating that holy power to dump into Final Reckoning burst with Divine, or Avenging Wrath into, like, Divine burst. So that's why I don't track Wake of Ashes. And Seraphim, like some players don't run it, but some that do. I'm not going to track this because players should know how to do this, right? They should know that they need, if they're going to Avenging Crusade or Avenging Wrath burst window, like they should get their Seraphim up prior, you know, getting into their Avenging Wrath, so it should be up, right? So not worth tracking shorter cooldowns like this. So priests are a little unique right now. They are kind of swapping out of mind games and running like a handful of priests are swapping to Fae, so Night Fae. But these are not cooldowns you really need to track. So for this video, I'm gonna keep them in here, but if it's annoying or you find that it's like not really useful, not really worth tracking this, those kind of abilities. Their big thing here is going to be their cooldowns. Their cooldowns are actually going to revolve around Mindbender. They have like their Chaotic Rift or whatever it's called, where their Mindbender, like it does a lot of really good AoE damage. So I have Mindbender being tracked, as well as Void Eruption, Power Infusion. With the healers, you have Rapture and like Divine Hymn. Vampiric Embrace is a really good cooldown as well. Shadow Priest, who runs Vampiric Embrace and lines it up with like their Venthyr or Mind Games. A lot of burst healing, really helpful for high stack Pridefuls. Really good single target from Priest right now, but their cooldowns are really evolved, like are revolving around their Mindbender on a 1-minute CD and like their Void Eruption. So they can do a lot of damage every like minute and a half. I've been running with some Priests more and more, and learning how they work compared to like how they did in BFA is kind of cool. It's a shame that they're changing it a little bit going into 9.1, but still most of this stuff will remain the same, though if we do see a big change, I'll definitely make sure to update this profile. Rogues are in a weird spot too, because rogues don't have that much offensive cooldowns to track. They have a lot of consistent damage. I also would argue in not tracking Serrated Bone Spike. I actually don't really like to track any of these. So for this profile, I made it like this, though I normally don't like to, because you have like a 30-second recharge on these. That the Echoing Reprimand is like sub 45, and then Flagellation and Sepsis like don't net them an insane amount of damage. It just like helps their rotation be a little bit more fluid, I guess, is the best way I would describe it, though I don't play rogue. So if I have something wrong, let me know. Just say, hey Shah, you're an idiot. Rogues work differently. Yeah, that sounds good. Leave that in the comment section below. Offensive CDs, Adrenaline Rush, Killing Spree, Shadow Blades, and Vendetta. Most of these other ones aren't really important. Some I think some are PvP if I'm not mistaken, but those are going to be the big ones. The like a Killing Spree with Blade Flurry is actually insane, so that's why I track Killing Spree. And I think this is a talent option, but it should like typically be ran by most rogues. Moving on to Shaman. Shaman's in a unique spot. Most of them are running Fae and Primordial Wave. Actually, like the majority still run Primordial Wave, but there's been like a huge swap into Fae, and a few run Chain Harvest, but Vesper Totem is unused. But again, tracking all of them, they do good damage. Primordial Wave you can probably not track, because it just helps them apply additional Flame Shock. So this is an ability you might want to remove. And when it comes to cooldowns, the big thing for them is going to be Ascendance for Resto. I have them all three tracked just in case for some reason you have someone who's an LA Shaman playing it, but they shouldn't be. The big things you're going to want to track is Stormkeeper. Big 1-minute burst CD, nets them a bunch of Maelstrom, nets them a bunch of uncapped AoE damage into Earthquakes. And then you have Storm and Fire Ellie. These are both good cooldowns. Nothing that you have to... Fire Elemental is not something that you wouldn't pull around, but Storm Ellie is something you'll pull around. A Storm Ellie, Stormkeeper burst, this is like 20k sustain for like 40 seconds. This is really good damage right here, the Stormkeeper Storm Ellie combo. And if they're playing the right Lego, they can get this down to like a 1.5-minute cooldown, which is just insane. But Ellie Shamans are up on, they're sleepers still. I feel like not a lot of people play them, but they're doing really, really well. So this is a class you might see a lot more often. And if you are a tank who's been picking comps, just you're like, I want a mage and I want a, I don't know, I want a monk and a hunter, consider some Ellie Shamans. Some Ellie Shamans out there are pretty good. I've been having a lot of fun playing mine. But without getting too off topic, let's jump into our last two. Warlocks are kind of unique. You can track their Covenant abilities. Most of them are fairly short cooldowns. You have 40 second, 45 second, and 2 minutes. So again, you could probably remove this. It's not going to net them an insane amount of damage. The biggest things here are going to be like your Dark Souls, and then your summon big boys. So your Tyrant, your Dark Lair, and your Infernal. These are going to be the bigger cooldowns. Again, this comes back to that argument, like, is it worth tracking shorter cooldowns like Cataclysm? Arguably no. If you really want to track it, sure. Just don't move mobs out of the Cataclysm when it's being cast. It's a pretty long cast. It's 30-second cooldown, but it helps like Warlocks get really good, really good damage off. And the last way we have Warrior. So Warrior, Ancient Aftershock, Spear, Bash, and Conqueror's Banner worth tracking. Condemn, I do not track because it's just part of, it's a passive, it's part of their execute. It makes their execute usable above 20% or above 80% and below 20%. And it helps them like prevent a little bit of damage. The big thing here is Bladestorm. Bladestorm is probably the best. Yeah, I track Avatar, Dragon Roar, Recklessness, and Warbreaker, but typically the only ones you really need to pay attention to are probably the Bladestorms, and then the Recklessness for that additional crit. So Warriors are pretty straightforward, nothing really to talk about. They have really good sustained right now. Their Ancient Aftershock, you need to pay it. It looks like a mini Wild Spirits when it's down on the ground, but it does so much damage. It acts like an Earthquake, like an Ellie Shaman Earthquake. It just keeps knocking enemies down, stunning them, and then it just does like really good damage, and it nets them rage to enemies that are knocked down. So like it gives them just huge dump every minute and a half, and it provides a lot of CC. So if you see a warrior running Ancient Aftershock and you see like a mini Wild Spirits on the floor, just stand still for a little bit. It's going to be better than trying to kite, because mobs are going to get stunned, the warrior's going to kill them. It's good. But that's pretty much it. So I want to touch on a few things. So again, I do recommend going through and not tracking a few things. Some of those things would be like the rogue abilities. You can probably get away with like a not tracking Serrated Bone Spike. You can probably get away with, again, like Condemn. Some of the Warlock abilities as well. Like there's just some that are on a short enough cooldown and don't impact their class enough to be tracked. But the other side of that is like if you track all of these, you'll know what Covenant they run. Though there are like different weak ores and add-ons that, you know, will tell you what Covenant each player is. I have an in-depth profile that I run that doesn't look like this. Like I track a lot more. Like I'll track CC and defensives and other stuff like that. That profile will also be available for you guys. Something you can go in and do as well is going to be the kind of like the racials, like War Stomp might be good to track. Things like Light's Judgment is fine to track. You have Dispels of like Fire Blood. So there are a few good racials you can track as well. And then there's things like the Covenant signature abilities. So tracking Purify Soul is pretty good. If you're a healer or a DPS, tracking your tank's cooldowns, Purify Soul is probably worth. But outside of that, that's pretty much a fairly generic breakdown of like what cooldowns you should track with OmniCD and a generic sense of how to set it up. So I hope I didn't rant too long in this video. Again, if you do have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. But I guess I'm going to cue my outro. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, I just want to know that I appreciate you. If I missed any offensive CDs that your class has, please let me know. While I do play this game a lot with a lot of different classes and specs, there are some unique builds out there that I might just not be aware of. I hope you guys enjoy, and just a reminder that if you are interested, my Discord server is now live, and it's going to be where you're going to find my 2 profiles for OmniCD, while also having the ability to connect with me and other players who watch my fairly mediocre content. So I hope you're all staying healthy, happy, and until next time, take care.